Hey there, Internet! Welcome to the Hard On Gear channel, where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear so that you know what is or isn't worth spending your hard-earned money on. For 10 years, I've been watching Recon 1 reviews, waiting for that one video that was going to tell me everything I needed to know, and I've still not seen it out there yet. There's lots of great ones, but I'm hoping this is going to fill that void. If you're in a rush, stick around for the first 10 minutes. I'll get through all the specs, the ergonomics, the materials. After that, we'll get into some of the more nuanced stuff and talk about some of the self-defense and apocalypse capabilities of the knife and some of the other bullshit that probably isn't necessary. Quick history of my use of the Recon 1. I purchased this knife in 2013. I carried this thing for about 8 years as my everything knife that I used for everything that you could possibly use a knife for. I pretty much came to the conclusion that if I was looking for an everyday carry, although a bit on the large size, but an everyday carry that could pretty much do everything, serve most purposes that even a small fixed blade knife would be able to serve, as it's got the hefty triad lock and a pretty good blade stock, and it's just a very thick, rugged knife. Essentially, I only wanted to buy one damn knife because I was a student, I didn't have a ton of money, and I tend to be hard on stuff, so I wanted to make sure I was getting my bang for my buck, best folding knife that I could possibly get while I was going to be going through forestry school and working in the woods, getting into wildfire and different things like that. It's been through the ringer. I've lost it a couple of times out of my pocket. I've lost it in a couch at a friend's place for a month or so. I lost it at an airport. For now, let me just say that I have used the crap out of this knife. As you can see from the DLC coating, it's quite worn down over the years. I've reprofiled the blade quite a bit here recently just to get the edge back and to get the tip back, because I sort of rounded that off over time. It has been used to pry and twist and open things. It has been used to cut down trees. It has been thrown at trees. Don't throw your knives. Unless they're throwing knives, of course. But just to give you a general idea, as far as a use and abuse rating, from a scale of 1 to 10, how hard have I used this knife in the amount of time that I've had it? This is a 10. I don't know what, this is the standard for the H.O.G channel. As far as why I decided to create this channel, I'd seen so many Recon 1 reviews out there, and there's just nothing close. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are very few Recon 1s out there that look as worn down and that have acquired as much use, abuse, and damage as this poor thing has. So as far as the amount that I've used and abused this knife relative to my other gear, this is a 10. So way back in the 1980s, just before I was born, there was the original Recon 1. That original model was shaped a little bit differently, a little bit bulkier, but it was basically a Recon 1 with a 440A steel, boo, and Zeidel, basically another nylon plastic, just chill cheaper for handle scales. But they upgraded in 2010. I believe the whole line was revamped. Might have been AUS-8 before 2010, but I know for sure in 2010 everything went to AUS-8 with G10 handles, which I purchased this one in 2013, so this is the AUS-8 version. Then in 2015, maybe early 2016, they switched to CTS-XHP. Man, I always stumble on that one. For their base steel for all of their basic folding knife lines. That CTS-XHP steel is a lot higher quality, much tougher, much more edge retention. Not super fun to sharpen apparently, but it certainly was an upgrade, and then the price went up accordingly with that upgrade in blade steel. But since Cold Steel is one of the largest knife manufacturers on the planet, and they sell just crap loads of these things, they couldn't keep up to the demand with the CTS-XHP, so they upgraded to S35VN. I think that the price point stayed about the same, but for that same cost, their manufacturing was so much easier because they weren't constantly on back order for their materials, and therefore they were able to keep up with their demand a lot easier. And S35VN is pretty much as reputable as CTS-XHP, so no real downside there. I'd like to get myself one of those S35VNs here eventually, and you probably will see me get a new Recon 1 just for the sake of trying out the new blade steel, and because, wow, this was such a great knife and it was so good to me, I can't see why I wouldn't want to get another one. But for now, let's stick to talking about this guy. So at a total length of 9 inches, the Recon 1 is a pocket monster. However, I didn't really realize that until I got my hands on some of these other things here. So like the CRKT M16 is what I always considered to be a comparable knife to the Recon 1, still not even close to the same size, a little bit smaller, and just the heft of the handle and everything. Here's the 940-2, which is a little bit smaller than the M16, but still makes the Recon 1 look gigantic. The Luzon is actually one of the things closer as far as size comparisons go. It's certainly not as thick, but it is another 9-inch knife, and it's got that sort of Cold Steel look and feel to it, both of which quite a bit larger than your average folder. Brat number 2, Model 2. If you are used to carrying a small knife like that, the Recon 1 is going to be a big adjustment. But what I got to replace it was the Manix 2. I could have went with the XL. The Manix 2 XL is about the same size as the Recon 1, but this was going to be a little more manageable for me. And as I got my hands on other knives, I realized I can get away with something a little bit smaller than this, and it will probably attract less eyes and be a little easier to carry. Definitely going to feel like a monster in your hands or in your pants. 9-inch total length, with about a 4-inch blade with only about 3 3/4 inch of cutting surface with that sharpening choil you have right at the base. For the weight, and just so you know, this scale is 0.1 of an ounce light, so the Manix 2 should be 5 ounces. It's ringing up at 4.9. Recon 1, I was on 5.2 and then I wanted to go to 5.1, so maybe I've worn down enough material and the washers, maybe enough little micrograms of weight have been worn off of this that it's now a quarter of a 0.1 of an ounce lighter. Anyways, 5.3 ounces should be the weight you're seeing. Apparently a little bit lighter on this one. You can get many similar models to this. The Recon 1's a little more tactical looking than the American Lawman or the 4MAX Scout or the 8010, the 8015s. They have a little more of a work knife look, but the Spartan, the Espadas, the Recon 1s, a lot of these, the Tylite, they definitely have a little bit more of a self-defensive feel to them. However, this one to me, the ergonomics and the blade to handle ratio were kind of what did it for me. 4-inch blade for a 9-inch knife, pretty decent. The American Lawman to me was just a little too stubby of a blade for how much handle. Full disclosure, and this is stupid, but the thing that finally sold this out of all the other knives I was looking for, I looked at other knives, other brands, and I was kind of pretty sure I was going to get this, but I was watching Deadliest Warrior. It was like one of the first shows I ever watched on Netflix when Netflix first became a thing, and they were going over the Navy SEALs versus the Taliban or whatever it was, and then ended up being that the Recon 1 was the Navy SEALs' preferred carry, or at least that's what they were showing on that episode. I'm sure it was marketing related, and Cold Steel probably got some bump back for having that featured. Anyways, it was just one of those dumb things where I was on the fence, but pretty sure. Then I seen that and I thought, hell, Navy SEALs are using this. What the hell? There's just a peek into my dumbass brain and how gullible I can be at times. But no, seriously, there's plenty of other reasons to enjoy this knife. Even back in 2010 and the year of 2013 when I bought this, the AUS-8 steel was still considered, and still is, a pretty damn decent steel for the price. Probably not for the price of $120 Canadian for something like this. Nowadays, I think you're looking at more of a $100-ish, $110 price tag with the upgraded steel for the American price. And I'm going to end up paying closer to $140-$50 Canadian for the Recon 1 and S35VN. The CTS-XHP, the CTS-XHP steel you can still get on the secondary market, but you be careful what you're going to pay for that, because it's probably not worth $200 to $300 if you're trying to get that specific steel. If you need it for a collection, great, but bang for your buck, you're better off going with the S35VN version. If you can find an old secondary AUS-8 version for like 50-60 bucks, I mean, hell, why not? If the triad lock still holds good, which most of them do, I haven't found many other reviews where the triad locks have started to wear down just from the general use and abuse. The handles are G10 textured in this cold steel pattern, which everyone knows will rip your pockets up. So what you do after a few years is you sand off the kind of the base of it here where the handle, or the belt clip, the pocket clip, where the pocket clip clips on, you sand that thing off with some sandpaper, and you sand this other side off with some sandpaper if you're right-handed. This is the left-handed side where I did originally have my left-handed clip, but as you can see, that's gone. Don't know where it is. The right-handed clips got all the use for the last 4 or 5 years, and underneath, if you sand it down, you're going to reduce some of the wear on your pockets, which will happen over time because it's a pretty tight clip and a pretty aggressive texturing. On top of that AUS-8 blade steel, you have DLC coating on most of these Recon 1s. They have a satin finish now, I believe, on the S35VNs, but I believe most, if not all, of the old versions were black DLC coated. That's a diamond-like coating. It's fairly hard, but it will wear off over time. Some people get rid of it right off the bat and sand it off. I know most of us don't mind seeing that wear off, and we kind of wear it like a badge of honor when you can see the abuse some of our knives and gear have taken. But if that's an issue for you, you might want to just get rid of it right off the hop, or order one of the satin finished ones or whatever's available without the DLC coating. The thumb screw here is interchangeable left or right, so I've got this thing set up right-hand draw right now just because it's not my primary carry anymore, so since I only have the right-hand belt clip. If you had to get another belt clip, or pocket clip rather, you could just email Cold Steel, get a hold of their warranty section, and I believe you can, if not get the parts for free, you can at least get the parts shipped to you for a small cost. In the back, you have what might look like a backspacer, but that is the triad lock, or the vast majority of the triad lock. There's a few other little parts in there. And then there's the backspacer, which is this big, bad piece of metal here, just extra reinforcement, which you don't really need, because this is two thick pieces of G10 for the handle scales. There's no liners in there at all, because, well, I don't know what you would need them for. You could not make this any more sturdy as far as the handle goes. This is the spear point version. You can get a clip point, a spear point, or a tanto. I believe that's the only three options, but each of those three options can be picked up in a combo version, so half serration, half full-bellied blade. I picked up the combo because I was a little bit more about combo edges back then. Only in the last couple years have I realized I really do not need combo edges for everything. Only certain tools in certain situations. Otherwise, just a pain in the ass to sharpen, and you can't get as good of a cut if you're trying to do a long slice through something. So you can get what you prefer. However, I will be getting the full-bellied version on my next Recon one, and pretty much every folding knife that I get from here on out. The pivot is a T10. The Recon one is not a slick, super fun, fidgety knife. It's meant to open and stay open and not close on you. So if you really want to make it slick and make it open and close really easily, and you're probably not going to get this to drop shut, but you can adjust the pivot and lighten it up. Slick. But I don't know if you really need to do that with the triad lock, and because this thing is so worn down, I can't really do that anymore because I have blade play, which I don't think is normal with most Recon ones. Again, I have done terrible things to this knife, and it has still held out. And even though you get that blade play, once I tighten up the tension again, it still operates perfectly. There's still a little bit of wiggle there, but I don't actually notice it when I'm using it and doing cutting things. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this open right now, so I'll try and plug a picture here, hopefully I have, of some open Recon ones. You can see what the triad lock looks like. You can see the phosphor bronze washers with those little Teflon washers on the outsides of them. I don't know if they're really necessary. I don't know the reason behind them. I'm not an expert on knife pivots, but they keep dust and debris out pretty well. Could be a little bit better, and honestly, if I've used this thing for plenty of time out in forest fires and forestry situations, and over time you will get some stuff building up in the pivot. It's what happens with folding knives outdoors. So when I'm outdoors, I'm normally carrying fixed blades so I can do more fixed bladey type stuff where I don't have to worry about shit getting into my pivots. But compared to a lot of fancier pivots, phosphor bronze is very good at pushing out dirt and dust from the pivot, so you shouldn't have terrible issues. But just keep in mind that if you want something that's fidget friendly and you're just going to sit around in the office, you might not get quite as much enjoyment with this thing. Ah, really tightened that pivot up, didn't I? As you will with, say, the Benchmade 940, which you can fidget around with all day, and super slick, runs super well. This thing had some issues at first, but it's smoothed out quite nicely over the last couple of months. And the Manix 2, of course, with the Spydercos, you've got all kind of fidget factor. But this is actually the same washer system, minus the Teflon washers aren't present in this. But they both have phosphor bronze. They're both going to push out, not as fun, they're both going to push out quite a bit of dirt and dust. But the Recon 1 is probably going to be one of your better fixed folding knives as far as being able to be durable and reliable outdoors over long periods of time. So while I could go on and on about the triad lock, I'll just say do some research on just the triad lock itself and look at some of Cold Steel's videos on just the different testing and everything they do on this. The Cold Steel testing videos, those hardcore, crazy ninja shit type of, you know, we're going to cut down a pig with a small folding knife and see what happens. Well, the triad lock can stand up to several hundred pounds of pressure. Lynn Thompson's big thing is he is a Filipino martial arts guy, and he's also a shooter, and he doesn't want anyone's fingers to get chopped off by his knives from the lock failing. So he's very particular. And when him and Andrew Demko designed the triad lock, I believe mostly Demko, but when they put the effort into designing this lock, it was all about not allowing it to close on your hands in any kind of crazy situation you might find yourself in. And I can tell you, I've never ever once felt like the triad lock failed me, even now that it is weaker and a little bit roomy in the blade play department. The trust I have in this thing is pretty much absolute. Oh, and feel free to insert your Cold Steel fanboy comments right down below here, and then you can... Ooh, I was talking about Torx heads, weren't I? So those are T6s on the body, and for the pocket clip, you can see I can actually get my T6 into the pocket clip screws. However, because I'm a dumbass and I'm not very good with tools, I'm not a mechanical person, while these operate quite nicely inside of those, oh, they would if I actually had the wrong right head up here. What did I just say about not being super mechanically inclined with this stuff? So the T6 will fit in this and it will turn, but it is very worn down on this set. So I need to get a, I'm probably going to get one of those little Weehaw sets. But I need something a little bit better to take this apart again, because those screws are locked in there for good right now. The threads have been torn right, and really, I'm not going to put any more damage to them until I get some better tools. So yeah, that's on me, not on Cold Steel, although I wish, like you'll hear different people complain about all the time, I could really use some larger Torx heads like T8s and up on all of my body screws and pocket clip screws. That would be awesome. Every knife brand out there. But what if you have screwed up a part, or you've lost a pocket clip or done something like that and you need to get a replacement, or let's say something for the craziest reason happened and you believe you're dealing with a quality control issue with this knife, which is rare because Cold Steel does a very good job with their quality control. There's great videos out there of them testing all their knives, or at least one knife from every single batch that comes off the line, just to make sure that there's no random defects that happened during the manufacturing process. They apparently have a pretty good reputation of squaring things away if things were their fault. However, you can't expect them to be super empathetic if you lose a bunch of stuff like pocket clips or screws. However, if you do need replacements, I have emailed them about mine, and they basically said you just send us a parts order and we'll send you whatever at a pretty reasonable cost. So I live in Canada, it's the States, it'll probably cost me more for the customs to get that stuff shipped over here and whatever, or the shipping and all that, so it's just probably not worth it for me, especially where I'm not using this anymore. I've got it set up for right-hand draw, so I'll carry it as a backup sometimes, and I'll probably get a new Recon one eventually, so I won't worry about it too much. And like I think Benchmade and Buck and a lot of other knives, the warranty also allows you to send this knife in to get it sharpened at no cost, other than, of course, the cost of shipping, which you'll have to pay. Cold Steel really does have a great reputation for putting out quality, and they take a lot of shit for their Mall Ninja looks, which is fair, and I lean right into it, and I totally accept the fact that this is as tactical as it looks, and it's supposed to be a little bit intimidating, and it definitely has gotten me some looks when I've hauled this out in everyday life. Be careful when you're hauling this out in a grocery store or a bank. If you just want to take some dirt out of your nails, people might think you're making a move. But Cold Steel really does market their stuff in that tactical military fashion. The Cold Steel SRK fixed blade has been the standard issue for Navy SEALs, at least through BUDS in their initial training deployments for 10, 20 years, long enough anyways. There are many law enforcement and military and firefighters and all kinds of different hard-used people out there who do use the Cold Steel products, especially those with the triad lock, because again, we're going to fanboy over the triad lock a little bit. It's not necessarily that it's the strongest lock out there, and Blade HQ's got some cool testing videos which basically break down all the different locks and how they hold up the different weights. And while they don't do the triad lock, probably for the sake of being sued, they test out all kinds of different locks, and they do hold up to comparable pounds per square inch as the triad lock. The thing is, it won't disengage on you accidentally. The position and the strength of the lock basically means that once it's locked, you're not going to have the issue of you ever cutting through something or getting in the situation where that knife's going to close on your fingers. I'm not saying other locks can't do that. I'm not saying the Cold Steel Triad lock is the best. I'm saying it's super awesome, and there's a reason it's super awesome, so give it shit if you want for being awesome. Unless you like fiddling with your knives, then it's not so awesome. It is also worth noting that Cold Steel has been sold by Lim Thompson very recently now. The new owners should be doing more or less the same thing. You can't expect big changes unless they want to risk losing a lot of their customer bases. So there could be some changes in Cold Steel's future. It's something to keep track of at least for the next 5 or 10 years. As of this video, 2021, we'll just see what happens with Cold Steel and its brand. Let's talk about how this thing cuts, because it's very much built to be a cutting slash beating slash slicing slash everything kind of a knife. Now, while you say it probably shouldn't be a knife that you beat on things with, let me tell you, especially with that AUS-8 steel, you can beat on this thing. And if you nick a rock by accident, you don't have to worry about a giant chip coming out of the blade. You're just going to have a dull rolled edge. Not the biggest steel in the world when you're using this as a bush knife. So the AUS-8 steel, great advantage there. And then being able to just take a cheap little field sharpener and just touch that up. I mean, hell, you could probably touch that up on a freaking rock you find out in the woods if you had to. AUS-8's very, very sharpenable. You cut a little bit of paper and it won't take long for that edge to start to wear down. This has got a decent edge on it. Probably not push cutting sharp anymore, but I reprofiled the, oh, okay. I got a push cut a couple push cuts here maybe. But it was very, very dull, very, very rounded. I might have a picture of right before I finished profiling this, but you can see now the tip has been, I kind of overdid it on this side a little bit, doing this all with hand stones just because I'm stubborn and I like to try and get better at difficult shit. So fun to practice on this old OS 8, very easy to sharpen. There was essentially no usable edge left on this before I reprofiled it. Because of the serrations, this back edge doesn't have quite the amount of sharpened surface, but I kind of evened it out a little bit. The tip was totally rounded off and it would not poke anything anymore if it had to. But it's pretty damn stabby now and it's back to a little more of a spear point rather than a drop point without an actual point to it. Yeah, you can see there's a slight swedge up here in the top, and it kind of has a nice thick heavy blade stock up here, so it's not going to be the sliciest thing in the world, but this is a hollow ground. The new S35 VN versions are going to be full flat. I don't think there's any variation in that, so you're going to have maybe a little bit more of a slicey blade in that full-bellied, full-flat grind, but when this when this hollow grind is on point, it's going to be pretty damn slicey, and even for this half-belly blade, I can still get a decent amount of slicing work done just by pushing through with that nice hollow grind. And well, we're going to shit here, because as soon as you hit that serration, it's not going to slice very well. So there's the big issue with serrations, folks. If you haven't experienced a comma wedge before, you're not going to get the slicing you want out of different stuff. And, well, let me just say again, that OS 8, especially with an imperfect sharpening job, it's going to cut, but it's not going to be hard for little nicks and imperfections to form. And I think I've definitely got one right around that starting point. But just keep in mind, OS 8, it's going to dull quick on you. It is not a super steel. The S35 VN that you're going to get when you purchase one now, something with a little more of that full-bellied, flat grind, which this is actually a little bit dull right now. It might not even, well, no, we're still getting some decent cuts, but I don't know what the hell I've run this through recently, but we got some trees and gravel, but it needs to be touched up. But nonetheless, what you're going to expect is something a little more like that full flat grind from the new Cold Steel Recon one, and that is your hollow grind where it swoops down, gets thin, and then widens out a little bit at the edge. Now, where I've used this mostly is with wood and other things, and that's where the serrations can actually come in handy. If you need to sharpen a pencil in the field, those serrations are super, super convenient. If you do need to saw through a piece of wood, let's see if I can cut my thumb off here on a video. If you do need to saw through a piece of wood, it's not going to be as quick as a saw. It's not going to want to be your first option, but you can do it, and I have cut down some decent trees. You can do a lot of the outside work just hacking and chopping and that kind of thing, but when you get to the pith, the center of the wood or tree, that saw does a nice job of cutting through there, the serrations rather. But if you need to do any kind of a carving or scraping job too, they can actually be used to make, to give you some fire starter if you need to get some fine sawdust or shavings, which I'm going to have to clean off this thing here now. But the serrations are nice, they have their place, but if you want to do some real cutting, you can't dig in with the belly like you can with a full version. And my roommate through forestry school actually ended up getting a Recon one not long after I did. I remember thinking when he ordered his, well, dude, why'd you get the full-bellied version? That doesn't seem nearly as capable or as cool or anything like that. And he's like, nope, I like the full-bellied version. I don't like serrations. I like to be able to cut things all the way through. And I thought, whatever, man, that's lame. Fast forward here 10 years and 8 years and basic 9 years. And he was the smarter of the two. So and his knife's not quite as worn down. I've got some pictures from my last visit with him there to show you basically the differences between someone who uses their Recon one occasionally, and for him, just it's so funny. You shouldn't be able to lose this thing. He's lost his a couple of times, and for him, he just doesn't want to lose it. But he's used it a decent amount versus mine that has been used right to shit, and I beat the living crap out of this knife. So in that photo too, you can see the difference between the tip when it's not beat on and then having to be reprofiled, as well as how well the DLC coating maintains if you're not using it aggressively and in the terrible abused ways that I've used this knife over the years. So how's this thing feel in the hand? Well, the ergonomics are awesome. Comfort in hand is getting up there with something like the Manix 2, which I gotta say probably wins as far as ergos and comfort in hand. Of any knife I've ever handled, the Manix 2 is probably the most comfortable and ergonomic when you're using it. So far, I have not gone through any long chopping tasks or anything like I have with Recon 1 yet, but in the 4 months-ish that I've had this knife, I can say now for sure this is the most comfortable pocket knife I've ever held. I feel like the XL might be a little more comfortable though, but we'll find that out sooner or later. But the Recon one is damn close, and if you like bigger knives, God, this is, it fits in everywhere. I mean, you got the full 4-finger choke up here for if you have large hands. Mine are large, but not that large. If you have smaller hands, you shouldn't have any issue. The care that was put into designing this knife for the hands, I believe this was reworked in 2010. Very ergonomic, very comfortable. If you had to choke down on it a bit and get some extra room for chopping or stabbing or whatever, you can choke down and get a 4-finger grip down on the base. You could choke up here a little bit, actually, on a forward finger choil type position. That's not what it's there for, though, and you risk sliding up and catching your finger on the serrations. I can really tell you that this is a comfortable knife in the hand, in the pocket even, for the size of it. It's quite thin, and you really will never have any issues with using this for too long. Ambidextrous features. Let's see here. So basically everything about most Cold Steels, not even just the Recon one, but most Cold Steels are ambidextrous. Triad lock is ambidextrous. Backlocks in general are ambidextrous. It's a little awkward to reach back with either hand to have to get it, but once you get used to it, you get used to it. The thumb screw can be switched left-handed or right-handed, same as the pocket clip, which comes with in the box, both the left-handed and right-handed pocket clip. Can't find my box. I know I lost the other pocket clip. The pocket clip is so slim that even if you do have this in your offhand, it's not any less comfortable than if you had it in your dominant hand with the thumb clip kind of wrapped around your inside of your palm. So that's nothing to really be concerned about. If anything, I kind of prefer having the offhand pocket clip because it gives my ring finger a nice little, I guess a spoon, almost a little pocket to slip into. Ambidextrous as heck, even with, well, and there's the proof, even with a left-handed person using it with the right-handed setup for, I want to say about 3 or 4 years that I've had to use it like this. Again, just drawing it reverse and deploying it like so. I've never had any issues with this in either hand in any way. I guess except for the fact that once you lose your dominant hand pocket clip, you're going to be stuck using the non-dominant hand pocket clip unless you order a new one from Cold Steel. Or an aftermarket one, which I could do as well. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, I have lost one of those screws out of that pocket clip, and those 6 pocket clip screws do actually hold the base of that together, but I'm not too concerned of that being an issue at this point in time. So, sou'paw approved? Heck yes, very sou'paw approved, absolutely great ambidextrous knife. So as I kind of just mentioned, it does carry pretty nice in the pocket. It's quite thin. It's for as large of a knife as it is, and when you put it in size comparison to something like the Benchmade 940-2, which disappears in a pair of shorts, let alone a pair of jeans or work pants, when you look at the thickness, it's actually not that much thinner than the Recon 1. The knife slips away quite nicely. Aside from the fact that it's 9 inches, most of your general hard use, full size, full weight folding knives are going to be around 4, 5, 6 ounces. So this really isn't that bad at 5.3. And again, anything that you do for 2 or 3 weeks or 8 or 9 years, you get used to. So for me, it's not a big deal. For some people, it's going to be super cumbersome and not worth the size. If you're wondering, you cannot reverse flick, spidey flick, whatever this thing. Maybe if you got it really lubed up and you got it loosened up and it was well worked in with no grit in the pivot at all, maybe. Loosen the pivot up to the point where it almost falls apart, maybe. But I mean, that triad locks aren't really reverse flickable as far as I know. So good luck. Let me know if you get that really smooth and buttery smooth to the point where you can spider or middle finger flick it. Ugh. How about the drop? I don't even want to, oh yeah, too dangerous, not going to try it. This is not a fidget knife. This is a open it and get your work done knife. And then take your time to put it away. If you need a knife that's going to be reliable in the field, triad locked Cold Steel, anything, I'm not a Recon one in general, but a triad locked Cold Steel knife is going to be a pretty good solid choice for a reliable folding knife in the field. There's not a lot of folding knives you can say that about, but the Recon one is certainly one that I've had in the woods many times, and I know worst case, if I did get some dirt in the pivot and it didn't function perfectly, it would still do everything I needed it to do, and I wouldn't have to worry about it coming unlocked on me. As far as durability, with that AUS-8 steel, again, you're super easy on the sharpening, and if you do hit something you're not supposed to hit, which does happen when you're out in the woods and bashing stuff with knives, you shouldn't be doing that, by the way. Be careful. Use tools the way they should be used. Disclaimer over. But if you do hit a rock with this, or a hard piece of tree branch or whatever, then you're going to get a little tiny roll. It's not going to cut super well. Anyone who's used cheap knives before know it sucks when something gets dull and can't cut, but for me and the kind of stuff I do with my knives, I don't want super hard, chippy steels that I'm going to have to spend 5 hours taking a chip out. And what goes hand in hand with that is the maintenance and the cleaning of this knife, which is very minimal. And again, I apologize, my screws are so worn down, I will not get this thing apart without completely ruining the screws and never getting them apart again, but I will try and get a better set of driver bits and see if I can very carefully and slowly take this thing apart again. But for now, if I need to clean it, I'll just blow it out with a little bit of compressed air and then slap some lube in the pivot. Other than that, it's got a closed, the backspacer closes the inside, so you can't really blow through like the Manix 2 or the Benchmade 940, where some hot air goes through there and it cleans it very, very easily. The Recon 1 takes a little bit more work, but very, very little. So we've talked about everything practical. Let's talk about all the hypothetical stuff. So number 1, with the Cold Steel Recon 1, be a good defensive / tactical knife. If you were a police officer or in the military or somewheres where you're allowed to carry knives for those purposes. Because in Canada, we cannot, I repeat, we cannot in Canada carry knives or any weapon or any tool or anything like that for self-defense. This is a work tool and only a work tool. And if I were to use this knife in self-defense, it would not be of my own conscious effort. It would be of something that happened because the worst case scenario came upon me and I happened to reach for something and this knife happened to get in my hand. Total accident. This is a work tool for work purposes only. But it'd be an awesome self-defense knife if you needed one. The thumb deploy, which again is on the opposite side right now. So if I open this right-handed with the thumb screw where it should be, it's super easy to hit. Now, I just over-tightened that pivot. I'm going to loosen that back up. If I don't, I'm going to forget, and it's going to drive me crazy if I actually had to use this thing. But when you have the pivot adjusted correctly, it's pretty easy to hit that thumb screw, even again with the offhand of the thumb screw. Very easy to deploy. Whatever you're using, especially in a knife like the Cold Steel triad lock knives, which aren't super fidget friendly, make sure you have practice doing whatever you're doing if you're carrying it for self-defense. Not only is the grip very, very good for defensive capabilities, again, the triad lock is designed to never have to be a concern for you if you're in those situations. It's not going to come apart on you. It's not going to fold over on your fingers. It'd be a crazy situation if that ever happened. Some knives, like a liner lock, you wouldn't want to put that same faith into, because if you're right-handed using a liner lock, like most people are, and you're twisting or something happens, and then your finger ends up here, or even just the inside of your finger ends up catching that, and you end up closing that on your fingers. I'm trying to do it carefully because I don't want to snap that shut on me. It's not going to be a good scene. So having something that can't be activated super easily is very comforting if you ever had to use that in a fight. Hopefully not a knife fight, because nobody wins in a knife fight. Not a great idea. If you wanted something slightly more tactical, you could go with the Tanto version, which has some extra penetration capabilities if you had to punch through something. But the spear point is my preferred blade shape. Regardless, very, very handy, very, very capable against most things people would be carrying if you got in that situation. And would I carry this into the apocalypse? If the end of the world were coming upon me, everything I've described in this video tells me I would be picking this over most knives. This exact knife, because of the blade play and the fact that it is worn down and I can't take it apart and all that stuff, maybe I'd sit this one out. But if you had a brand spanking new or even a well-worn but still in good condition Recon 1, that's about as good as you're going to get for an apocalypse folding knife. A fixed blade's probably going to come first, so if you had to pick a knife for an apocalypse, probably go with a fixed blade. If you had to go with a folding knife, or if you felt like for convenience or for not putting on a big show and basically allowing people to know you're carrying a knife, if what's the word I'm looking for? Clandestine behavior, concealment. If concealment was an issue, you had to carry a folding knife in the apocalypse. I know, we're having fun here. The Recon 1 or any Cold Steel knife would probably be a pretty damn good choice. The 4MAX Scout, the 8010, 8020, Andrew Demko 8020, the 8015s, like all these super rugged, thick, anything that's a big, thick, heavy Recon 1 style knife from Cold Steel. Apocalypse knife approved, for sure. I would take this thing into any kind of shitstorm and expect it to perform, and that's basically the mantra Cold Steel has behind their creation. Lynn Thompson wants you to believe that if you're ever in a bad spot, you can 100% trust his knives. So what's the H.O.G rating on this bad boy? Where does this sit on my scale of usable and abusable gear?
9 out of 10.
If this thing were a fixed blade, I might give it a 9.9 or a 10. I think really the only thing missing from this is the fact that it could be one solid piece of metal, then it wouldn't be a folding knife. But relative to the Azula 2, which I also gave a 9, just because it's, while it's super awesome, It's just not enough blade for me as far as what I would really like. And we got an 8.5 hog rating for the Manix 2 from Spyderco. The Cold Steel Recon 1 is about as hard on gear approved of a knife as you're gonna find. I know there are better folding knives out there, and I know there are better cold steel folding knives out there, but considering this is my first major well-researched knife purchase, overall I couldn't be much happier with this thing. And if you're looking for a hard use tactical EDC, hard use EDC, whatever you're looking for, the Recon 1 is going to be able to serve just about any purpose. If you want to see how these bad boys got their hog ratings, you can check out those videos, as well as any other of the videos for a lot of these knives you've seen on here. If you want to give this video a like, appreciate it, helps the channel out. Subscribe if you haven't, turn the bell on if you want to see the videos when they come out every Monday, as well as some other bonus videos up there. And keep in mind that at 1,000 subscribers, whenever that happens in the next year, I'll be doing my first knife giveaway, which will be some kind of a hard use folding knife or fixed blade, something along the lines of this right here. So keep an eye out for that. For now, thanks for watching, and this is the Hard On Gear channel, signing off.